Well, the All-Star Game is on Fox. It's tomorrow night. I am proud. It's in the Pacific Northwest, in Seattle, where I grew up as a kid watching bad Mariner teams at the Kingdome. Derek Jeter is now part of Fox. And when I think of Derek, I don't just think of 20 years with the Yankees exclusively with the Bombers. I don't just think of the 5 times as a World Series champ. I think of him as clutch. He was also unbelievable in all-star games, in postseason games, which he played over 150. Derek Jeter, our pleasure, joining us now live from Seattle. Yeah.
Thanks for having me, Colin. You know, I'm a little disappointed you're from here and you're not here.
I know. Yeah.
You should be on site.
Yes, I should be. Thank you for mentioning that. You know, you could rub up to the bosses here before the game and give a little heads up on that. You were obviously a great postseason player. We talked about that 15 minutes ago. You were like a beer league softball player in the All-Star game. You hit 480 in All-Star games. So what was it? Because you're facing the best pitchers, and you just rolled.
It's a good question. I have no idea how to answer that. I think it's you have to enjoy the stage. You enjoy the stage of an All-Star game. You enjoy the stage of postseason, and you got to have fun. You know, I never treated those games like they were any different. I think sometimes players get in postseason games or get an All-Star game, they try to put a little bit more pressure on themselves. But I just enjoyed it, and I had a good time. And look, there's a lot of luck that came my way as well.
You know, Derek, I was thinking about this. I always had this theory on New York. If you became a star and grew with the city, Aaron Judge, Posada, you, Eli Manning, Michael Strahan, Jalen Brunson with the Knicks, you don't enter as a star, you become one in New York, the city will have your back forever. But if you come in as a star, A-Rod, Melo, Giancarlo Stanton, there's a lot of pressure. And when the Mets go out and spend a lot of money, man, that's a lot of pressure. Do you sense sometimes it is harder to not grow in New York but be a star when you come?
Without question. I think the thing is when you come up in New York, you know, the fan base, they watch you struggle. They watch you grow. They see you every single day. And then when you come in as a free agent, the only time they see you are in the highlights. They see you hitting home runs. They see you driving runners in. You know, they see the success. And then when they come and you struggle a little bit like every single player does, I think the fan base looks at it like, I've never seen this before. You know, this is not what we signed. So it is much more difficult, I think, to come to New York when you're a free agent as opposed to coming through the organization. Thank God I came through the organization because they had a lot of patience with me.
Yeah. No, I read the book The Captain by Ian O'Connor, and I've also watched the documentary on you. And I think what's most remarkable is how tough it was early in your career. You were young, you were thin, you didn't have your strength and power quite yet, and you developed into it. You know, I look at the late, great George Steinbrenner, and now we have a different iteration, his kids. And a lot of Yankee fans are always beating up on the Yankees. They won't go spend here. And I'm like, well, they spent Garrett Cole, Giancarlo Stanton. They're a very good baseball team, but the fans expect more. Have they underachieved, or do you just think it's the Braves, the Astros, the Dodgers? They got big money, they're really good, and the world's changed.
Well, I think, one, you have to realize it's difficult to win. You know, that's why people celebrate. It's hard to do. So just because you spend money and you sign players doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win a championship. I know we made it look easy for years there in New York, and it's not easy. We had a lot of breaks that went our way as well. So I look, the Yankees continue to spend money. They continue to sign players, but ultimately it comes down to you have to have a great regular season to get to the postseason, and you have to be hot during the postseason in order to be the last team standing. And, you know, the Yankees just haven't got hot. They've gotten close. But, the great thing about when you have a high payroll is you give everyone optimism. You give the fan base optimism. You give the players on the team optimism. But ultimately, you got to perform on the field, and that's on the players. But it's very difficult to do. You're not just going to win because you have great players on your team.
So Aaron Judge is banged up. The Yankees have struggled to hit when he's out. They just got rid of the batting coach, which they don't do, the hitting coach. That's not what Brian Cashman's history is, but there was some sense of urgency. Is there a move at the trade deadline, Derek, that would make sense to you, or should we just be patient?
Be patient. I mean, patient isn't a word that you use in New York, especially when you start talking about the Yankees. So I don't know if they're going to be patient. I can't answer that question of what their mindset is, but the Yankees are struggling to score runs.
Yep.
Look, the pitching staff, you got Cole, you have Severino, you got Germán. You got Rodon coming back. You got Cortez coming back. So the pitching is there. They just need to score some runs, especially while Aaron's out. Who knows when he's going to come back. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later. But they are scuffling to score a few runs here and there, and I would expect them to do something. What that is, I think, you'll know in a couple weeks. But I do expect them to do something. They don't really sit still for too long, especially when they're in the race. Look, they're only a few games back, so they still have that opportunity, so I would expect them to do something. So
when I was a kid growing up in the 70s and 80s, I always felt like the National League had more good players. The Dodgers, the Reds, the Pirates, the Phillies, they just were stacked. The American League now has better players. I couldn't tell you I think it's 10 years ago, the National League won an All-Star game. Is there a reason behind it? I mean, some of it has been the Yankees payroll, that you guys had great players, but it does feel like the American League has more good players. Is that changing?
Well, look, when you grew up, what'd you say, the 50s and 60s? The
70s.
National League was. So, yeah, when you grew up, yeah, I mean, look, I think sometimes the American League's on a run right now, and some things you just can't explain. Like you asked me about success in the All-Star games, you just can't explain it. But, I'm an American leaguer, so I hope this run continues.
Derek, they've made some changes in baseball. I never liked the defensive shift because I think in basketball you can't be in the key forever, and in hockey you can't be in the crease. So I didn't like baseball players playing in right field. I just think I want to see – it's not fair. I just felt there was a sense it wasn't fair to hitters. And the pitchers now are all 6'5". They all throw 98. You got about 4 different pitchers. Let's make it easier to hit. The games now are much faster. Now, I like that as a consumer, but as a player, these 2-hour and 19-minute games, how does that sit with you?
Well, I agree with you with the shift. I think, when you talk about having the shift, can you still hear me there, Colin?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep. Hold on one sec. It may have unplugged.
We got disconnected.
All right. Let's plug it back in. By the way, they're watering the field, so all you guys treat him with respect and don't soak Derek Jeter as he's sitting in T-Mobile. Can you hear me now? Derek?
I got you now.
Okay, go ahead.
We're back. So what I was saying was I didn't like the shift either. I think ultimately, as a baseball fan, you're used to when balls are hit hard to the right side, it's a hit. And then all of a sudden you look and you have someone wandering out there in the outfield. So I was big on eliminating the shift as well. When you talk about shorter games, look, I would have loved it as a player. I mean, we came up when you had the Boston-New York rivalry. We were playing 4.5-hour games every time. So as a player, I would have loved to have 2.5-hour games. So I think it's good for the consumer. It's good for the fans, the shorter time frame. But then also I think the goal is to have more action in the game. So some of the rule changes I think have been great. The reaction, the response from the fans have been great. I think it's easier to watch a game on television. So I'm actually all in favor of the changes.
Shohei Ohtani is, and we've said this before, he's got Mookie Betts' speed, he's got power, and if not for a blister, he could have been starting in the All-Star game. But in the Angels, Derek, he is a little bit hidden in Southern California. It's a Dodger area, right? So he could make another $100 million somewhere else, or he could be great. What is your takeaway on? I mean, you get to a point when you make $600 million or $580. I'm not sure what the difference is, but I get players wanting more money. If you were an agent or recommending stuff, what do you make of Ohtani's path going forward?
Well, the difference is $20 million. So I think it's easy for people to say there's no difference. There's a difference. Look, I think for Ohtani, and you can put Trout in there as well, I think as a baseball fan, you want to see the best players on the national stage. And, unfortunately for Anaheim, they haven't been in the postseason in years. Ohtani's never played in the postseason. Trout's played in there once. But even if you look at the WBC, I mean, the whole world was watching Ohtani. He was a shining star. So you want, as a baseball fan, to see them in those situations, but it's unfortunate. So you say hidden. I think he's been hidden out there just because they haven't been on that stage yet. And, something's going to have to change because I know players – that's what they want to do. They want to have the opportunity to play for a championship. They want to be on that stage so they can showcase their talents. And I think baseball has been missing that, both Trout and Ohtani up until this point.
Finally, when you were in the middle of New York and you were this big star, you always had an ability to not disappear among the people, but you were just seen as, and it's a remarkable talent. You were a star, but seen as sort of an everyman. Like a guy would go, oh, I'd love to have a beer with Jeter. You don't say that about every player. Now you're retired and everybody in New York knows you. Do you miss sometimes, though, the juice of being a Yankee in center stage, and you never leaned into it? That wasn't your juice. But God, those teams were fun. You were in the center of the universe. Do you miss a little bit of that juice?
I wouldn't, look, once you're a Yankee, you're always a Yankee. You walk around, people still recognize you, people still want to talk to you. They still they thank you for the championship that you won. But I think the stage changes, man. My center of my universe now is at home. I got 4 kids under 6. So, look, I got a lot going on, too. So it went from cheers to screaming and crying and yelling. So I still hear the noise. It's just a different type of noise.
All right. You got the wiffle ball years coming up. Great seeing you as always. Absolute pleasure. Have fun in my hometown and continued success. It's great to have you at Fox, Derek. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.